Welcome to the Getting Real with Hilary show, where ordinary heroes tell extraordinary stories during unique and never been heard before conversations with your host, Hilary Arno Burns. Hilary's unique listening and way of asking questions results in conversations that aren't usually talked about, so you can create the life that you really want but are afraid you can't really have. We are demonstrating the greatness in the human spirit and creating a world where we all reclaim our birthright of joy, happiness, purpose, and passion. Now, here's your host, Hilary Arno Burns. Welcome to the Getting Real with Hilary show, and we have a really, really cool and interesting and fantastic guest today. But before that, I just want to shamelessly promote my book that was just published last week, Real Talk by Hilary Arno Burns, on Amazon. If you haven't gotten it, there's still a special ebook price of 99 cents. And this book will change your life because you will start saying stuff that you don't say in order to have the life you really want, but are afraid you can't have. So there it is, shamelessly promoting my own book. And if you haven't read my first one, it's got the rest of the story, which is called The Second Piece of French Toast, also available on Amazon. So anyway, it's my show. I can say whatever I want, right? Anyway, all right. She's waiting in the wings. Dr. Rebecca, okay, I always say I'm not going to cry, and I cry. So Dr. Rebecca Ward, we met in some transformational programs a few years ago. Every time I hear more about Dr. Rebecca, I'm just blown away by what she's accomplished, who she is, what she stands for. So she's a psychologist, and she specializes in working with children with autism and other developmental disabilities. So welcome, Rebecca, Dr. Rebecca Ward.
Thanks, Hilary. And congratulations on your book.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, it was a really fun week. But it doesn't end. We want to keep spreading the word. And this show is for people to talk about what they don't always talk about. And I know, in our bullpen, we were talking about some of the stuff in your life. And so, that's what the book's about. And that's what the show's about, is getting people to start talking so that we can get free of the stuff that gets us stuck. So where do we want to start, Becca? Do you want to start when you were 7 or before that? When you were 3? Yeah.
I think that maybe I'll just frame it in a way about, I'm going to talk later about the book that I'm writing and about the work that I've done. And I've been a psychologist since 1995, but I've worked for much longer with people with developmental disabilities. And so I wanted to start off talking about just how I got to be where I am, like how I got interested in that and what about my early childhood led me to that. And so I guess the thing that stands out for me the most was that, I grew up in a family with 7 children, and so it's a big household, and there's a lot that was challenging in kind of the middle years, like the age 7 to 10 years. And there was a lot of stress for my parents, and it led to us as children witnessing violence between my father and my mother. So that was a really, obviously, a big traumatic event in my life. That wasn't a one-time thing. It was over several years. And
so when you say violence, does that mean he was like physically violent?
Verbal and physical violence.
So you would see him harming your mother.
Yeah. And I would say, like there was, multiple events, and one particular event that was particularly traumatic that I would say that formed a bit of how I am in the world, in terms of, having to kind of, like, my strategy for surviving life was to shut down in order to survive. And I think that's not uncommon in trauma when children experience.
Right. So can you say what happened?
Oh, that my father threatened my mother with a butcher knife, and we're three of us witnessing that. So nothing terrible happened in the long sense of no one was killed. And it's really just the trauma of witnessing something like that and having each of the children have their own experiences of that. My older sister, who wasn't much older, I was like 8, she would have been 10, took the knife from his hand. And, and so she had her own way of dealing with it. So, like it was pretty
Wow.
dramatic. It was a pretty dramatic scene, but in my memory is more like a frozen scene. And in psychology, we talk about that as, what's the word? Blocking on the word now. This is my senior moment. When you just
Trauma or
when you just check out, what's
okay.
that, and so that kind of experience over a long period of time led me to have a view of myself that I was shameful. Like there were shameful things going on in the family. I'm shameful. I can't really reach out and have friends. No one's going to want to be a friend with me. And so there was this break in belonging around that time of like, I don't belong. And so there were a couple of years of having no friends and then gradually having friends, but always in the background is this kind of doubt about belonging that persisted, I would say, right into adulthood. And it really impacted all relationships. And so I was married, and that marriage didn't last. And then I became, in my 20s, I was already studying psychology. And I think that what I had the opportunity to do in my early 20s was, I met my husband, we're together still, been together like 37 years. Um, he's a psychologist. And part of the dynamics when someone sees themselves as shameful and not good enough is that they're often trying to prove themselves. And so, so that's what I was doing in my life, was like I had to become something to prove I was a worthwhile person, worthy. And so
Mm.
I became a psychologist, and I went on to be just like my husband. So there's this sense of, like partnership, and it's, it sounds really nice, actually, two psychologists working together. And, we've done a lot of great work together, research together. But in the background, this very, what I would call a very immature, young conversation, is this idea of I have to be good enough. I have to prove I'm good enough always.
Now,
And
if you had married like someone, an architect, would you have become an architect? Or were
maybe
you already on the
actually that
path
would be
of,
very appealing. I would have liked to be an architect.
so you became that because your husband was one, and like in order
Well,
to,
yeah, there's
or
a
no?
whole other story
Yeah.
from high school where I wanted to be an
Okay.
artist, but I hadn't
Oh.
actually taken all the, because didn't look good. It didn't look smart. It looked smarter to go like more the academic route in high school. And so I did that route. But a part of me really wanted to be the artist. And so if I had met an architect, I'd be free then to have been an architect or something like that.
Or
I
like, what else? Who else could you have married? I don't know.
don't know.
A garbage collector. You'd be out on the truck with your green
Be
bins,
there.
right?
Yeah. No, I think it was more the fact that I really admired my husband Maurice. I really admired him and admired what he was up to. And I was already on track. We had met through work, so I was already on track,
Oh,
doing
okay.
with people with developmental disabilities. I didn't suddenly switch
Right,
gears.
right, right. I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing.
No, but
My mind was going over. Yeah, okay,
no,
go.
you've got
Go
my
back.
mind going there too. It's funny. Yes. So
Okay. So
yeah,
back
so
to yes.
yeah,
20
so
when you were in your 20s, you started the psychology. That's right. Took you off
yeah.
track. Yeah.
No, it's okay. So yeah, and it was only after meeting Maurice that I got this idea that I should become a psychologist. In the meantime, I was working, doing more direct work with people with developmental disabilities and autism, and so then, then I
And
also
that
got,
was in college? That was already
oh
like
no,
just in
that was in my early 20s. I was pretty well done.
okay.
I was
Okay.
done
Now
my
how
BA.
a question that's
Mhm.
you were already married once? How early did you get married? Like very,
Got
very
married at
young?
19, when same age that my mother was when she married my dad. So
Wow.
So it's fun to look at patterns and how we repeat things.
And how long did you stay married to that one?
6 years. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Pretty short. And there's nothing wrong with him. He wasn't alcoholic or violent or anything. I hadn't repeated that pattern, but he was a really great guy. And I just had other ideas about my life and where I wanted to go with it.
Mm,
So,
wow.
yeah. So
Good for you.
that was kind of how I ended up kind of down this psychology track. And, and I think it's something that it's important, I guess, to talk about these things, because each of us has a way of, like how we got to be the person that we are today. It's often driven by those early experiences. And I think you've
Mhm.
looked at that in your show all along, but it doesn't end just because, oh, now I'm a psychologist and all this hunky-dory. It's like it then goes on to other things. There's the not being good enough story persists. And so having to be an expert in autism became the next thing. So, and it was great in the sense that I really love working with these kids. It's really a wonderful focus. I worked with a lot of parents and, really doing a lot of parent training, teaching parents how to help their children and working with schools. And, like all of that is really a passion for me, just making a
Mhm.
difference in that realm. But behind that, this young conversation was like, I have to be an expert at something to prove myself still. And
And were you still like when did you feel or notice the shame? Like when were you aware of the shame?
that really didn't get clear to me until I did some transformational work. The
Oh,
work
okay. Okay,
you
so
and
that
I
was
have done.
later.
Yeah, that came
And you
not
were still just being the best and having to shine and looking good and
shiny. I was
proving
very
yourself.
shiny. Yeah,
Yeah,
trying to be
yeah, okay.
shiny. Always with this doubt and this. What some people talk about is like a fraudulent kind of self, like, oh, they're going to find out I'm not really great at all, and
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah,
no,
yeah, yeah.
that was definitely there in the background for me. But but in
And
that.
why,
Mhm.
no, why autism? Like, how did you get to autism from psychology? How did you pick that?
Well, when I was young, I had a lot of connections with people with developmental disabilities in particular. So I had my first husband's brother and sister both had developmental disabilities. So I knew them through my teens.
Wow.
I had a best friend who had a brother with a very severe intellectual and physical disability. And
Wow.
yeah, and I started working when I was probably 16, maybe grade 11 or 12, I can't remember. With programs back then, there weren't a lot of programs for kids. They didn't go they didn't go to school. They stayed home with their mothers, essentially, those with severe disabilities. And so the parents would start programs for their kids, often in church basements. And so I got involved in one of those programs and started to get really interested and, discovered, oh my God, like this is, these kids can't go to school was number one realization, but also that the kind of challenges that these parents had was really significant, like trying to
Yeah.
raise like that and having no support. And I kind of knew that through my boyfriend's siblings and
Right.
who was my boyfriend at the time, and my girlfriend's brother as well. So it's kind of a switch
Interesting.
in that world.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that, yeah, and obviously, even though I mean, obviously you like it, you enjoy that work, even
Yeah,
though
no,
it's
I
not
do.
hard, but
Do.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. Even though I'm
must have
talking
been
about this,
drawn to it. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
it definitely was. And um, there was a program back then. Now it's called, excuse me, now it's called Developmental Service Worker
Hmm.
Program, it's a college level program. Back then, because of the language that was used, it was called mental retardation counseling.
Wow.
And that's what I went into, was that course. And it was a 2-year college degree. I didn't go to grade 13, which was something, in order to get to university at that time, you had to have grade 13. And I didn't want to go that route. So I did this college program for 2 years. And then after that, I went on to university.
And
Um,
where was that? Was that Canada?
College? Yeah, I lived in Windsor, Ontario.
Oh,
And
okay.
which is across from Detroit.
Right. Okay.
And the college was like not right in my town. I got to go live in a town nearby where there was a large institution, and these institutions don't exist. I don't think they exist in the US either anymore, but huge institutions that might have 1,000 people living there with developmental disabilities. So that was at I was 17 to 19 when I went through that program. And
1,000 people?
yeah, yeah, like it's like built like a hospital, right? So it's wards.
Yeah.
So they're all in their different
Wow.
wards depending on ability levels and different kinds of needs. And I got to the program at the time that I was in was very behavioral, meaning that it was teaching us how to be behavior analysts, how to
Mhm.
look at the kind of challenges that people were having. So now people will know it as applied behavior analysis, or ABA.
Mhm.
It's a huge field, and it was a not so new even then, but it's really grown as thousands and thousands of practitioners in
Wow.
behavior analysis now. And most of those people are working with children with autism. So that was in part because of it was around 1987. There was a psychologist in California who did some research, Ivar Lovas. He did some research that demonstrated that you could take kids who were autistic and you could work with them over a 2-year period. And by grade 1, they were indistinguishable from their peers. And so it was a small group, though. It was only 19 kids, and half of them became indistinguishable from their peers. And so there was, from that was like a launching off. It was like an amazing discovery, in a sense, that this doesn't have to be a lifelong condition if you give them the right kind of intervention. And the kind of intervention was this ABA therapy that was being used back then, based on the work of B.F. Skinner. It developed from a behavior analytic point of view. So
Wow. Isn't it amazing?
yeah, it
So
was. It was
before
amazing.
that, they couldn't go to school, and after that, you couldn't tell them apart, right?
Yeah, yeah. Probably by the
Such a
80s.
huge difference
Yeah, yeah. By the
for these
80s.
kids and the parents, right? Oh my God.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So kids were going to school, but these programs were being offered in clinics. And so when I decided to go into becoming a psychologist and studying, I ended up going to the University of Toronto. And the person that I was working with worked at the Institute, Surrey Place Center in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I worked with him, and he had set up a clinic. He was a student of this Ivar Lovas from California, and
Mm.
he had set up a similar replication, essentially, of that program. And so I worked in that program and did my thesis work with kids in the Toronto community who had a mixture of autism and developmental disabilities. So that period. Yeah, no, it's
Wow. That's
a great period to
like
be.
whatever you call it, breaking work. Something breaking work. What do you call it? I can't think.
Groundbreaking.
Groundbreaking. See, you're not the only one. Groundbreaking. Really? The
Yeah,
fact that yeah, that's incredible. You were in the right place at the right time, right? To
yeah, yeah.
be at
No, it was
the
really
like
good.
forefront of this. Amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that kind of really got me deep into the work, and it's probably in that time period that I decided I needed to be an expert. And so like getting other kinds of training and really just digging into the research and doing my own research, which was all
And what
about,
was your, yeah.
yeah, my PhD thesis was about language and how kids develop language and how they understand language. And it was specific to autism, though. It was like, when you can't understand language, how do you process things, like, looking at visual information, how important that is into our communication, and kind of working up from there. It was a study with about 30 kids that I ran around Toronto, going to schools, doing these little assessments with kids to try and help see how their language comprehension was developing. So,
Wow. And how did you know? I mean, that's so how do you know what's going on inside? Or you
Well,
had a
it's
way
more,
of
yeah, no,
like,
it's more what you can observe, right? Like the
okay.
observable things. It was providing them with a little test where they had to
Mhm.
interact with the materials that I was providing them. And then you would be able to see some of them would respond to certain kinds of tests and not others. And then you could say, okay, given what we know about this child's language abilities, and this is how they do on this test, it was really, being able to say that this little test could be used as a way to say, okay, if the child performs at this level on this test, then we need to start here in terms of our language training, using lots of visuals and whatever. A child that performs this far on the test, then we can be able to um, teach them with some different strategies. So it was really intended to kind of get at other ways to intervene to help kids learn language, especially understanding of language, which was a great difficulty for a lot of kids we dealt with. They were majority of kids were nonverbal or minimally verbal that I was working with. So they might have had like short sentences at the most.
Wow,
So,
that's
but
amazing.
yeah, but then there are a lot of kids that, they might not be able to speak, but they actually understand a lot. And so that through a test like that, you're able to kind of see that, oh, they do understand a lot of what we're saying, they can't,
Wow.
even though they can't speak themselves. So
So did they end up using that test? Did it get
it's the
like
test has been
into
used in it has more research was done on the test and other people have used it and it's yeah, I wouldn't say that it's used regularly, but it is something that has been used.
nice,
Yeah.
nice.
So so
Wow.
that's
Did
like
you prove yourself with that? Was that enough?
no, it wasn't enough.
Had you made it yet? Right? That's the thing about that winning formula. You never quite ever get fulfillment, right?
You never get there. No, you never get there. And so
Never enough. That's fine. Never enough,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah. So
sold that many books, but next week nobody's gonna buy. So where did it get me, right? It's really crazy.
it
Our
is a
brains
great,
are
it is a
our minds
crazy human thing that we do. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So you marry your husband. What else? What else we got?
Um, I have a son, I have a stepson, I have grandchildren now.
Oh,
That's where as
oh,
soon as you said that, that's where my mind went. All these,
oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
Well, so, all right. So you're going along, and then somewhere in your 40s, you took some transformational programs, right?
Yeah, I did what's called the Landmark Forum, which I did in 2001, so 21 years ago. And then took a lot of other courses and assisted with courses over the years. And but it wasn't really, despite being a psychologist, I really hadn't done a lot of transformational work, like work on myself. I'd
Oh,
really been focused on, the clients that I'm working with and, really focused out there on what I was up to. But that whole looking inwards at, well, how did you get to be this person? I never really looked at that in that direction at myself much, which is amazing, but you can get away with that even as a psychologist. And so I did this transformational course and really got to see how I got constructed and saw these very young conversations of surviving trauma and the sense of not
mm,
belonging and all of that, and how it really drove me in my passion about autism and about developmental disabilities in general. It's like they pretty well all children who have some kind of disability, and it doesn't even have to be autism or developmental disability, it could be ADHD or learning disabilities. They all have a sense of not being good enough and of not belonging, of being on the outside of something. And friendship development for those groups can be very difficult. And so I think that was the core of what drove me, was this, desire to have friends and to have to prove myself to be worthy of having friends, that I didn't want children to have to do that, like
mm,
to go through life like having to prove yourself instead of just
yeah.
appreciated for who you are.
So, yeah, one of the things that I've seen in my interviewing and talking to people is that I haven't met one person who thought they belonged, no
Mm-mm.
matter what, whether they had trauma or whatever. I
Mhm.
just think nobody thinks that they belong until they say it, and then they realize, oh, everybody feels that way.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
so it is interesting, right? That we and that you would gravitate towards that population.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah,
I'm like
yeah,
lost in my thoughts here that
no, I
because
think it's like and become interested in issues of friendship and belonging, and I think that's why rather than like a general, like general work with children with developmental disabilities, autism in particular has this social communication piece that's super
mm,
challenging, and so I think that motivated me to, you know, like looking at like how can I help children have friends, just like I
mm,
did when I was young, but their issues are different, you know.
wow.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so being able to follow that thread and be able to see that everybody deserves friends. So that was a big conversation in the, I would say, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, was the issue of inclusion. You know, like everybody belongs, everybody deserves to
Mm,
belong, everybody has the right
yeah.
to belong. And so I was part of that conversation as I was going through my education and my early career. That was a really big thing. And so
Wow.
yeah, so in the I would say in the 90s, when I was just starting the PhD, because there was a long period of just working, working with people
Mm,
and serving people, young children with autism, but other children, older children as well, and working with their families, and really all through that time was that focus on having your children um, be able to fit in and be able to, that they have a right to be educated, they have a right to have high quality education, all of that. It was a very
wow.
strong period for human rights for people with disabilities during
Wow.
those couple of decades.
Yeah. Wow. And so we're almost at the halftime break, but what did you see? I keep going back to that shame
Mhm.
because I had an incident growing up and there was a little bit of it was just like one time where I got really scared. I don't
Mhm.
know that I had shame, I got fear. Like I learned I got to be careful.
Mhm.
I can never make that person mad again because it's dangerous. That impacted my life in terms of not speaking up and not,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
got to keep everything a certain way or it's dangerous. So what impact did that have on you when you saw some of the or not on that
Uh,
shame and that, the
yeah.
violence and being shaped by that? I mean, what did it open up for you? That's what I'm wondering.
I think I want to reference something you said about
Okay.
about having to walk. You can like walk on eggshells. So I was a person
Yeah.
who was excellent at walking on eggshells without making any noise, and from having
Yes.
lots of experience, right, doing that. And it's kind of like learning how to disappear. Or another metaphor I loved was being one of those commandos where you can stay under the wire,
Yeah. That was
like
me. Yeah.
learning how to get through life like that, right? Stay under the
That's what
wire.
I said. Under the radar. Just I
Yeah,
learned to be very quiet,
yeah, yeah.
not let anyone see me. Because my sister was the oldest. What number were you?
I'm number
What
four of seven, so I was the middle child.
Oh,
And
right
I
in the
love
middle.
I
Yeah.
love to say I was the fulcrum, but not really.
So you learned
um,
to be careful also. Wow.
yeah, being careful in life has been a theme. I could go on about
Mm,
that too. But yeah, so I think shame actually probably is very highly connected to being careful in life and being cautious and a reserved kind of person, not, like wanting to be seen and known, but then holding back, like that kind of dance was always there. So I think that was part and parcel of the whole becoming a psychologist thing, is, like being important meant that people would look up to me in some way. And then at the same time, I don't have to do anything to be seen. I'm just doing what I do. I'm, being practicing
for
and
for others. So you're kind of in the background, just being the listener.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Interesting, right? So you're
And
not calling attention to yourself.
yeah, so it's a perfect career path.
Yeah. Wow.
Anyway,
It's so
so
interesting, isn't it? It's so
it is
interesting.
interesting how we get this way. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. All right. So I think we're at our call it halftime, to use the sports metaphor, right? We need the cheerleaders out on the field and and the bands. But anyway, we're going to go into our commercials and then we'll be back to
Okay.
hear about the book and what Dr. Rebecca is up to now. So thank you.
Has social emotional learning become just one more thing on your teachers' plates? Do teachers and students both find it boring and ineffective? Then bring Kikori to your school. Kikori transforms classrooms through experiential SEL activities that help students play, reflect, connect, and grow. Even better, students say it's more fun than recess. Schedule a no-obligation conversation at kikoriapp.com/bringkikori. KIKORI.
Wow. Those are my new bumpers. That's what they're called, bumpers. And anyway, Kikori app. It's my daughter works for them, and they are an amazing company that brings social emotional learning activities to children, all ages. And they are looking for schools to bring it in like in the next couple weeks, so that they can keep going. They're an amazing company and they're all about making it available for free to everybody, but at the same time, they need to be a viable business. So if you know anyone in schools, anybody who could make the decision in the next couple weeks, please, you could email Haley, Haley at kikoriapp.com. That's my daughter. Tell them where you found her. And that would be amazing because it's really such an important company, and I personally want to see it continue. So I don't know if I'm supposed to tell people that, but I said, you know what, there's nothing to lose, right? Let's keep them in business, because it's really, especially after COVID, the kids weren't together. They got behind in socializing, and this app brings them together and communicating and emotion. It's beautiful stuff. So anyway, I just couldn't resist saying that. But we're back with Dr. Rebecca Ward, and we're going to hear what she's up to now with her book and everything. I can't wait to hear. So, welcome back.
Thank you. And I'm going to go check out Kikori. It's like
Yes,
perfect.
and
Perfect that you had it here today. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you know anyone in schools, I mean, really, it's time, because of this is just my opinion. I don't know if it's right, but because of the way that purchasing happens in schools, it takes a long time, and they've been going at this for a while, and just need to get over the hump with the purchasing cycle in schools because it's so valuable and it's so important for our kids. But anyway, that'd be awesome. If you need more information, let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Back to you. Back to you. Okay, so we got you through the transformation. You saw how you were constructed, and then what? What happened next?
Yeah, well, I guess what I want to talk about in the second part is, they somewhere around 2007 or 8. Well, in 2007, I started working at Brock University, teaching in a program called Applied Disability Studies. And it was mostly teaching people how to be behavior analysts. That was the emphasis of the program. It was a master's program. And people who are working in behavior analysis are called board certified behavior analysts. So it was a course sequence that would allow them to then take the exam and become a board certified behavior analyst. And that program was started by my husband, Maurice Feldman, at Brock University. So,
Wow.
Yeah, so that we were in
was that the beginning? Was that the beginning of this behavior analysis movement? Like your husband started it, or
this is more recent. This is 2006 that the program got started, and I joined the faculty in 2007, and I taught there for about 9 years, and so that whole like becoming a professor, that was another great example.
another notch on your belt, right?
Another thing, no, but at that time I knew. At that time I knew it was a notch, and it was just more like it was just such a great opportunity, and it was so wonderful to with young adults, mostly young adults, who were wanting to work with kids with autism and disabilities and so on, and it was just really like a fabulous time teaching there. And in that process, Maurice and I were doing some research on early detection of autism, and that was one of the areas of research. And I had some other students, but one of the things that really got me interested was I saw a TED Talk, and I'm really struggling because I didn't write down the name of it. Her last name is Jane McGonigal. She was a sociologist, game designer. And I think the TED Talk would have been somewhere around 2007. And she was no, it would have been later, a little bit later. Anyway, she was talking about gamers and the gaming world, and how, she was videotaping young people, mostly teenagers, while they were watching videos, or not watching, playing games on videos. And so she's videotaping their faces. And she was looking at the whole dynamics of being a gamer. And there's something at that time, a term that was called epic win. And it's now fashion, but it meant, that moment when you're
where you're like, yes, like that. Yeah.
That moment, so she would videotape them, and then she'd take these epic win moments, and she would, frame them like these images of these faces that they're at an epic win moment in their life or in the game. And the reason she was so interested in that was that it was like a parallel for our lives. She was looking at the real lives of people, not necessarily the ones that she was videotaping, but the real lives of young people, and how life wasn't like that for them. Life was not an epic win. Life was just like flatline, a lot of anxieties, a lot of worries about life. And I think that could be said today too, even though that's like about 10 years or more ago. And so she was like, what if life could be an epic win every day? Like, what if we could create our life?
Wow.
And just when she said that, it hit me like, the people I work with definitely do not have a sense of their life being epic. They're struggling in many, many ways, and so I had done a little bit of work with teenagers, much more with young kids, but I started to look at how could I work with teenagers and maybe even young adults at creating their lives. So it was very much a connection between the course I had taken for my own personal growth and development, the Landmark Forum, and I was looking at a lot of the people I work with, in terms of their cognitive challenges and their social challenges, may not be able to do the Landmark Forum. But what could I do that could actually give them something similar that would help them really look at their life and really be able to take charge of what do they want their life to look like? And so with my master's students, I had a bunch of master's students that I engaged in this over about a 5-year period, that we worked together to design and implement a program called My Life as an Epic Win. And it's probably the best time of my life, I would say. It was so delicious. And, working with these young adults, having my students kind of help in the design of this course, it really was about having them understand like who they were, like really getting to see that they didn't have to be anything. They could just be themselves and be valued. And when they look at creating their lives, it's like, what do you love? What are you passionate about? How could that be made into some kind of career path for you? Some of these people may be at a level where maybe they'll never really work competitively in the job market, but they could contribute to the world in different ways. And how could they do that? And how to have them go on that journey of looking at their whole life. And so that's what the course was about. And it was a 12-week course. We delivered it 7 times, and we were able to impact small groups of people in each of those courses. And we wanted to keep it small because it was very intimate kind of conversations about our lives. And it was also a course to teach them how to then go out and take the actions in the different areas of life, like in their relationships, like friendships, in their independence, like becoming more independent, in their career, like what do you want to do? What do you want to be? A lot of them, I should say not a lot, they were 16 to 24. That was the kind of age group that we ended up working with. And at the work life and education, like further education beyond high school. So
I have a couple questions. So was this through the university? Was this a separate thing? Was this with
no, it was a
disabled
year.
kids? Was this with regular kid? Not to be regular, but who was
Yeah,
it?
no, it was
It
with kids.
sounds so, I mean, the whole concept of the epic win that they're having it doing a video game and not in real life is like mind blowing, right? That's
Mhm.
I mean, I've had some, if I look at, if I go back and look at my life when I did that triathlon and when I published the books and stuff, it's like, yes, you do something that you don't think you can do, but not on a regular everyday basis. And a lot of it probably was because I had done landmark work and didn't and knew how to go through where I would normally stop, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
But
yeah.
so that the fact that you made that a program, that's blowing my mind. I mean, what happened to that? Where is it now? Can we bring that back?
Right now it's all just in here.
Oh,
It's in a book form, and it's I'm finishing writing the book, and
oh, okay.
um I finished working at the university in, sorry, I can't remember the years now. It's like 2016.
Okay.
I finished my work at the university, and so I did not deliver the course after that. And I went off and did other things. I started a business and served younger children with autism. That went on for that was a 6-year business up until the end of COVID. So it's like during those 6 years, I thought a lot about it, but I didn't actually take any action. So it's only been through COVID that I've been kind of resurrecting that project and writing it as a book, taking essentially the manual that we use to deliver the course and putting it into book form so that it could be disseminated to a lot broader audience. And it's being designed that young people themselves could read it. There's actually going to be a section, like a separate little exercise book for the young adults to work through. And it's meant for them to work it through with a parent or with somebody who cares about them, a teacher or another professional. And yeah, it's like I can see how it'll be like a jumping board into adult life, because you do, by the end of it, you'll come away with very clear goals and action plans in all the areas of life that matter to you. So
That is so cool.
it is very
It's
cool.
like so needed. Kids get out of school, they don't know where to go or what to do. They don't look at I mean, I have this purpose and passion exercise that I do with people, and they really get in touch with who they are and what's special about them and what they enjoy. But so few people take me up on it, And so if this is in a book form, I mean, I just think it's so important for us to get in touch with our greatness. Like that's part of this show is like we get to see your greatness and hopefully you get it too, all the things that you've done, shame or not. I mean, it's amazing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
for other people to get, you know, it's like, if you take what you were saying about anxiety, people have anxiety and PTSD and all that stuff over here, right? Boom. But over here is that part of us where we have certain special gifts in our heart that we were given. I don't know how we got the ones we got, but we did. And imagine being in touch with that over on this side. Wow, and creating life, that other stuff might go in the back because we don't have time to deal with it because we're creating this amazing life. You
yeah.
know,
I think that's
imagine.
totally true, that it does take a back seat, and it can pop up once in a while.
Yeah.
Like,
But you have something else to
yeah,
focus on. If
yeah,
that's all you got, and you're
yeah,
not up to anything, it's
yeah,
all about my anxiety and my PTSD and what drugs are you on? I mean, I've heard these kids.
yeah.
How many milligrams do you take of the blah, blah, blah? But it's like, because they don't have something that they're up to. I mean, that's just me going on my soapbox. But anyway, I
No,
just love where
that's
you're going.
totally
God.
true. And I think that inside of this course, that's what there is to look at. Like, what are you really committed to? And how do you stay in action despite the real and the imagined barriers? Because there are real barriers for young people with autism or any kind of challenge, I would say developmental challenges, so it's like their
Well, I
parents.
think, yeah, and I think there's barriers to regular kids,
Totally. Yeah.
not wanting to be uncool. My daughter didn't want to look weird, like we all have our stuff, whether we're developmentally challenged or not. I think we all have our little incident where we made up a decision about ourselves, and that's what gets us stuck. I don't want to speak up. I feel like with that book launch last week, I used everyone up. So how can I do another one? Like there's a certain allotment, which is not true, but that seems to be true until I say it, and then I realize, oh, I made that up.
Yeah.
But we all have our stuff. Anyway, I'm just so excited about this. So, all
Yeah.
right, so keep going. I'll try to stop interrupting, but this is so cool. I love it.
It's
Love
good.
it.
Good.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So where I am right now with it is I hired somebody to help me edit the book, mostly to have that partnership, because the noise in my head, like we were just saying, and I think there isn't any writer who probably doesn't have some of it, is like, what do I actually have to say that anybody's actually going to listen to, and why bother, and look at, I've got all this other stuff I could be doing and should be doing, and so on. So it's really just to try and keep myself on track, and yeah, and I'm up and down about that. It's not like smooth, right? So it's like finding the time to write and to get this book done. I'd say like it's halfway done. It was already a shell of it in terms of a manual, so it was really just reworking it. And I found as I'm writing, I'm adding a lot more of myself to it, which is an interesting process. It's no longer this technical manual. It's more an expression of myself, and being able to put in some stories about, my life, and stories of lives of people who I've worked with who, had mountains to climb, and, things to get around, and really just appreciating that the person who's reading this book is going to be dealing with all of that themselves, and they've got somebody who's in their court, like their parent, their teacher, their healthcare professional. Somebody is on their side working with them to get, to really create their life beyond the limitations that they might think are like a ceiling on their life.
Yeah. Oh, so
Yeah.
cool. And I think stories are so, when I'm reading like a, I don't know, technical book, I gravitate to the stories because that's just more entertaining to me than
Yeah.
facts. So I think
Yeah.
that's great. The more stories you put in, and you must have zillions from all your
I don't know about
years.
zillions, but there's a lot of stories that have been really inspiring. I'll share one story. I don't know what time we have anyway, but
Yes, please. We
yeah,
got 6 minutes.
yeah, there was a young woman who was in the course. I would say she was probably 22 or so. And she was like, if you met her, you would say, yes, this is a person with a disability. She had more obvious kinds of differences about her. And yet she was what we called selective mute, meaning she couldn't talk. She had language, but she couldn't use her language very functionally. And when she did talk, she whispered. And you had to be really, really close to make out what she was saying. And so during the course, someone sat beside her so that they could listen and then speak up for her. And through the course, a lot of things got revealed about her and who she was and what she was interested in. One thing that was fascinating was that she collected jokes, and she really wanted to be a comedian. And so that became a great motivator for her to talk.
To speak, yeah.
So by the end of the course, she was able to speak loud enough that everybody in the room could hear her. And it was just a safe space, for her. And people were so encouraging. The other participants were so great with her. So that was really wonderful. But another part of her story that I so loved was she came from a very traditional family where her mom never worked. Her mom stayed home, take care of the kids. And her mom had a hope chest, which I don't know if people all know what a hope chest is anymore. But a hope chest was what was saved for the daughter when she got married. It would be blankets and other things that were saved away, right? And the mother had a hope chest for her daughter who had autism, but she had put it in the attic because it was never going to happen. And it makes me cry too. It's like her what came through this course was her mom's coming to terms with her daughter. And her mom, because there was a part like this, the young people were in one room and sometimes parents and young people together, but there was time where I got to spend with parents and really just delve into their stories about their young people, which was is a great part of the course. And what became clear was that this mom had no hopes. She had given up hope a long time ago for her daughter. And somewhere in the middle of the course, the parents brought the hope chest back downstairs, because the daughter had talked about that she too would like to get married someday and have children. And it was not something the parents could even fathom, but they were willing through this course to even look at that she had a dream, that she could have a life just like her parents had had. And so that was like, it may not be the dream of maybe a lot of modern day girls, but it was her dream. And it was very moving to see that they took that step and they really were listening. And that was a big part of the course, is also about listening, like learning how to really listen so other people can speak. There's a book written like that for teens, listen so your children can speak, and speak so your children can listen. But this was true in this course. It was like, being able to be a listening for what were her real dreams and how can I support her in having those dreams fulfilled. And, and so just like the world kind of opened up, there was a sense of the world opening up for her in the course. And there's, lots of other stories like that.
Wow.
So,
but as it's so true, even what we do to our kids, trying to make them into something that they're not, and not having that listening, whether they're disabled or not. I mean, I think the lesson is so profound, for all of us, to listen to our kids as their greatness, not as their, I don't know, would you say weaknesses, or, where we're not strong, but to listen where we are, I think that's such a great lesson for all of us.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that really got to my heart. Wow. That hope chest. Oh.
It's like it's a story that I'm telling in the book, one of the stories that I'm telling, and it's to me one of the most important things. And I think that's what I want for all young people, right? And it's way beyond autism or developmental disabilities.
Yes.
It really is. In the world we live in, it's not a very easy path. Yeah, it's not an easy path. So I appreciate being able to talk about it with you here. This is great.
Oh, it's so wonderful. Yeah, thank you for the work you're doing. I wish we could go on forever. Okay, so I'm sorry we have to cut this short. Well, but anyway, if you want to talk more to Dr. Rebecca, you could reach her at Dr. Rebecca Ward 14 at gmail.com. That's DRREBECCA Ward, WARD, number 14 at gmail.com. And who knows what will happen. But yeah, I want to know more. I want to have you back when your book is out, and be able to talk more about it. Thank you so much. Anything else you want to say in closing?
No, I just appreciate having this opportunity to talk about it. It's like when I speak it becomes more alive for me and gets me more motivated to get the thing done.
So, good. All right. Well, anything I can do to support you, let me know, please, because I think it's a book that needs to be written. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Rebecca Ward. Woo!